Have you ever believed that family would always be your safe place? Until the day they took everything from you without asking. My name is Zoe. I'm 34, a financial director for a tech company in Denver. By most standards, I had it all: stability, a successful career, and freedom. Then one night, while I was in the shower after my younger brother's beachside wedding, $13,000 disappeared from my bank account. My mother, my sister, my brother-in-law, they didn't ask. They didn't apologize. They didn't even think it was wrong. In fact, they said I should be grateful they only took that much. I used to think I was lucky, but the truth is, I was just a wallet with a heartbeat. In this video, I'll take you through the true story of how a woman in America was financially exploited by her own family for years, and what it took to finally say, "But enough." You'll discover how silence and guilt become tools of manipulation in toxic families. Why pressing legal charges isn't betrayal, it's survival. And most importantly, how to heal after you've set boundaries with the people who raised you. I'm sharing this story not for sympathy, but because I know I'm not alone. If you've ever felt guilty saying no to your family, if you've ever been expected to give again and again just because you can afford it, or if you've ever wondered, am I being selfish for drawing a line, then this video is for you. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to forgive. It's to protect yourself even when it costs you the people you once called home. So let's go back to the moment everything began to fall apart, and the moment I began to find myself again. You know those people who seem to have it all figured out? That was me, or at least that's what it looked like. I lived in a bright, modern apartment in Denver. I had a stable, well-paying job as a financial director for a tech firm. I traveled when I wanted. I didn't have kids or a mortgage tying me down. From the outside, my life looked neat, organized, successful, even enviable. And for a while, I believed it too. I thought I was in control. I was the responsible one in the family, the one who always answered the phone, always found a way to help, always picked up the check when things got tight. My friends would say, "Zoe, you're so lucky. No drama, no debt, no obligations." But luck has a strange way of hiding the cracks, because behind every strong daughter is often someone who's carrying more than anyone ever sees. The truth is, I wasn't free. I was just quiet. Quiet about the financial requests, quiet about the guilt trips, quiet about how many times I said yes when I wanted to say no. I remember once during a Sunday brunch, my sister Rachel laughed and said, "Well, Zoe's got the golden life. She doesn't have a husband or kids to drain her wallet." Everyone chuckled. Even I smiled. But inside, I felt hollow, like I was being reduced to a bank account with no strings attached. It's a common illusion, especially in American families, that if you're doing well, you automatically owe more. That success equals availability. That financial stability means emotional responsibility for everyone else. But here's what I've learned since. Just because your life looks stable from the outside doesn't mean it's being lived on your terms. And sometimes it takes a single moment, one sharp break to shatter that illusion. For me, that moment came the morning after my brother's wedding, a celebration by the sea full of laughter and joy. Until I opened my banking app and everything changed. Let me take you to that moment. The moment I realized $13,000 was gone, and so was the blind trust I had in my own family. I remember it so vividly. It was the morning after my brother Jason's wedding, a beautiful beach ceremony in San Diego filled with laughter, music, and a sense of new beginnings. Marcus, my boyfriend, and I were checking out of the hotel, getting ready to catch our flight back to Denver. While he was packing the last of our things, I casually opened my banking app to pay for the room. And then I froze. My available balance, which had just been over $21,000 the week before, now read $8,000. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a tech error, a delayed transaction maybe. But as I scrolled through the history, line after line appeared $4,000 to Rachel Dunn, $5,000 to Kevin Dunn, $4,000 to Karen Bloom, all sent at 10:47 p.m. the night before while I was taking a shower in our hotel room. My hands shook. My stomach turned cold. "Marcus," I whispered, unable to hide the tremble in my voice. "It's gone. $13,000 is gone." He grabbed the phone from my hand, disbelief in his eyes. "Are you sure you had over 20 grand just last week?" "I know," I said, barely able to breathe. I counted every cent. It was right. And now, this. It felt surreal, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. But it wasn't. It was mine. And the people who took my money weren't strangers. They were my family. It's one thing to be stolen from. It's another to realize the thieves have your childhood photos in their living room. That morning, I wasn't just heartbroken, I was disoriented. Because when the betrayal comes from people you love, it shakes more than your finances. It shakes your sense of reality. Lesson I learned that day, even the people closest to you can cross a line if they believe you'll never draw one. And this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. This was planned. But what hurt the most wasn't the money. It was the realization that not a single person had bothered to ask. They didn't just take dollars, they took trust. They took choice. They took respect. And as we stepped into the elevator to leave the hotel, I made a quiet vow to myself I would no longer protect people who saw my silence as permission. What came next was the phone call that broke whatever hope I had left. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened when I confronted my mother and how her answer shattered the last piece of denial I had left. The phone rang just as we stepped into the hotel lobby. It was my mom. Still shaken, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I need to ask you something," I said. 3 large sums were transferred from my bank account last night. Do you know anything about that? There was silence on the other end. A long, quiet pause. Then, she chuckled. She actually laughed. "Oh, that," she said casually. "Honestly, I thought you'd notice sooner." My heart dropped. "What? Do you mean—" "Well," she went on. "Rachel said it was wasteful to leave that much sitting in your account, so we split it up. Consider it a wedding gift for Jason." I stood frozen in place, the lobby noise around me fading into a dull buzz. Marcus leaned in concerned, and I put the call on speaker. "That's theft," I said, my voice cracking. "Don't be so dramatic, Zoe," she replied. "We're family. You're single, you have a good job. What are you going to do? Hoard your money and live alone forever?" Marcus stepped in his voice, calm but firm. "What you just admitted to is illegal. Taking money from someone's account without their permission is a crime." My mother didn't miss a beat. "Are you a lawyer or just someone who likes meddling in other people's families?" That moment, something inside me broke. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a poor choice made in desperation. This was entitlement justified with the word "family." I asked her one last question. "Who took my phone?" She said it plainly. "Rachel. Your password was too easy." And then she hung up. Later that day, we drove to my parents' house. Everything was a blur except Marcus's steady voice reminding me, "You need to face them. You deserve answers." The front door opened before we knocked. Rachel stood there with a half smile. "Oh, you came back." I didn't say a word. I walked past her into the living room. Mom was flipping through Jason's wedding photos. Kevin, Rachel's husband, was lounging on the couch with a coffee in hand. No guilt, no shame. I spoke clearly. "We need to talk about the money." Rachel shrugged. "You should have picked a better password. It was too easy." Kevin laughed. "I even told her not to do it, but she said you wouldn't care." They weren't sorry, they were amused. I looked at my mother. "You knew, didn't you?" She nodded. Kevin needed car repairs. Rachel has Olivia's school fees. I used my part for medication. It made sense, and that's when I realized they hadn't taken the money in spite of loving me. They took it because they believed love gave them the right. Here's the hard truth. When someone says, "We're family," as a shield to justify wrongdoing, they're not talking about love. They're talking about control. I walked out of that house knowing things would never be the same again. In the next part, I'll show you what happened when I looked back at the past 3 years and uncovered just how deep the exploitation ran. It wasn't just $13,000. It was a pattern. And I had been silent for far too long. That night, back in my Denver apartment, I couldn't sleep. The room was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I sat on the floor surrounded by a sea of bank statements, emails, and text messages I had printed out. Red pen in hand, I began going through them month by month, year by year. Every highlighted charge was a memory I didn't want to revisit. $2,000 for Olivia's tuition, $1,500 for Mom's heater, $800 for Kevin's emergency car repairs, $400 Rachel said she needed for a broken arm, which turned out to be a down payment on Kevin's new phone. Each one came with a different excuse, but all of them carried the same emotional currency: guilt. Mom really needs her medication. It's cold this winter. It's just a loan you know will pay you back. You're doing fine, Zoe. We wouldn't ask if you weren't the one who could help. And every time I hesitated, they'd say the one thing that always silenced me. We're family. In 3 years, I had given them almost $26,000, and not once, not even once, did anyone pay me back. No one asked if I was okay. No one offered help in return. And I never complained, because I thought that's what a good daughter, a good sister was supposed to do. But looking back now, I realize it wasn't generosity, it was survival. I gave to stay connected. I gave to be seen as not loving. I gave so I wouldn't feel alone. But in the end, I still felt alone. And the hardest part, I blamed myself. I told myself I was too soft, too forgiving, too quiet, but maybe. I was just too hopeful. I kept hoping that one day they would see me not just as a provider, but as a person, someone worthy of care too. Here's what I've come to understand. When love is real, it never comes with conditions, especially not a price tag. As I sat there with the papers spread around me, Marcus walked in. He looked at the numbers, the messages, the highlighted lines, and then he said something I'll never forget. This isn't just borrowing, it was a plan. He was right. This wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a pattern, a quiet system that I had unknowingly supported for years. And once I saw that truth, I knew what I had to do. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened when I decided to stop being silent and chose instead to take action. It was a gray afternoon in Denver when the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw someone standing alone on the porch, hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders slightly hunched. It was Jason, my younger brother. The same Jason I'd flown across the country for. The one whose wedding I had paid for without hesitation. The one I had carried on my hip as a child, and now barely recognized through the weight of everything that had happened. He looked up, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not guilt, not pride, but something softer. Regret. "Can I talk to you for a few minutes?" he asked. I let him in without a word. The living room was still filled with paperwork and highlighted statements. The air was heavy with everything that had already been said, and everything still unsaid. Jason sat down slowly. "I know what happened," he said quietly. "And I need you to know. I didn't know they were actually going to do it. Rachel talked about it before taking your phone, guessing your password, but I didn't think she'd actually go through with it." He paused, rubbing his hands together. "I overheard them talk about borrowing from you. Not once, Zoe. So many times. How to word the messages. How to make it sound urgent so you wouldn't say no." I stayed silent. Part of me wanted to be angry. Part of me wanted to believe him. But all of me was tired. Tired of trying to make excuses for people who knew better. "And, Mom," he continued, voice barely above a whisper. "She kept a list of when to ask around birthdays, holidays. She said that's when you'd be most willing to help." I stared at the papers in front of me. They weren't just receipts anymore. They were evidence not just of theft, but of a shared silence that had kept the system running for years. "I should have said something earlier," Jason admitted, "but I was scared. Scared they'd turn on me too. And that's when it hit me. Silence isn't neutral. It's a choice. And in families, silence can become complicity. Jason had been part of the system even if quietly, and so had I, every time I stayed silent. Every time I told myself, it's just money. Every time I swallowed the discomfort, I gave them permission to do it again. But now something was different. "I'll testify," Jason said. "I'll tell the court the truth. Everything I've heard, everything I've seen. It's not right what they did, and I won't stay quiet anymore." I looked at my little brother, this man I had once rocked to sleep, and saw courage in him for the first time. "Are you sure?" I asked. "They'll turn on you too." "I know," he said. "But if I have to choose, I choose truth, and I choose you." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, because finally someone else had chosen truth too. And here's the lesson. It only takes one person to break the cycle of silence, and sometimes that one person isn't you. But when they stand beside you, everything begins to shift. In the next part, I'll take you inside what it was like to begin a legal case against my own family and why choosing the law over loyalty was the hardest yet most necessary thing I've ever done. Filing a police report wasn't something I ever thought I'd do, especially not against my mother, or my sister, or the man my niece calls Dad. But after everything I'd seen, heard, and remembered after Jason came forward with what he knew, I realized something that shook me to my core. If a stranger had stolen $13,000 from me, I would have called the police in a heartbeat. So why was I hesitating? Just because it was family, the answer was simple: loyalty. We're taught from a young age, especially as daughters, to be loyal, to protect, to forgive, to put the family first, even if it costs us our boundaries, our savings, our peace. But loyalty without limits becomes a leash. So with Marcus by my side, I gathered every piece of evidence, screenshots of bank transfers, text messages filled with manipulative guilt, a voice recording from the day I confronted them, a signed timeline of events from Jason. We brought it all to the Financial Crimes Unit of the Denver Police Department. And that's where I met Detective Tina Hargrove, a woman with tired eyes and a steady pen. She listened to everything. She asked calm, pointed questions. And at the end, she said something I'll never forget. This isn't uncommon. What is uncommon is someone like you choosing to speak up. She explained that in Colorado and many other states, taking someone's money without consent, even as a family member, is a crime under familial financial exploitation statutes. Not just a bought family misunderstanding, not just a bought rough patch, a crime. Do you want to move forward? She asked. I looked at Marcus. He nodded, and I said, yes, I do. That moment, signing my name on the official report, felt like signing the end of something. Not revenge, not anger, but a quiet farewell to the version of me that always said, it's fine. Because when someone crosses a boundary repeatedly and expects you to stay silent, it's not loyalty they want, it's compliance. And I couldn't be that person anymore. Yes, I was scared. Scared of the backlash, scared of what my mother might say. Scared that people would think I was ungrateful, selfish, dramatic. But I was more scared of staying stuck in a life where my worth was measured by how much I could give, not how much I deserved to keep. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened when my family found out I had reported them and how quickly love turned into blame, guilt, and threats. Because when you finally say no to being used, some people don't try to understand, they try to punish you. The backlash didn't take long. The morning after I filed the police report, my phone buzzed before sunrise. First, it was my mom, then Rachel, then Kevin. One message after another, short, sharp, and accusing. Zoe, what are you doing? You're tearing this family apart. You're seriously calling the cops over a few $1,000s. You know, Kevin could lose his job. Olivia will suffer. Are you proud of that? Not one of them said, I'm sorry. Not one of them admitted they were wrong. It was all blame, all guilt, all threats wrapped in family language. For years, I had given without conditions. And the one time I set a boundary, the one time I said, what, enough? They treated me like a criminal. I didn't respond. I knew that anything I said would be used to twist the narrative. So I stayed silent and let the law speak for me. But it wasn't easy. At night, I'd lie awake wondering, did I go too far? Am I really hurting them more than they hurt me? Then I'd reread the messages, the ones where Rachel called me selfish for not paying for Olivia's camp, the ones where Kevin casually asked for rent money like he was ordering takeout, the ones where Mom said, you'll regret this if I get sick. And I'd remember they weren't asking, they were expecting. There's a difference between helping someone and being used by them. And the moment you say no, you'll see which one it really was. Weeks passed. Then came the real consequences. Jason texted me one afternoon. Kevin got fired. Turns out his company had a strict code of conduct. A court case involving financial misconduct, immediate termination. A few days later, my attorney informed me that under the civil ruling, their bank accounts had been frozen for restitution collection. Their house, the same one I had helped repair years ago, was now in pre-foreclosure. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt heavy, because even though they had wronged me, it still hurt to see people I once loved fall apart. But the truth was they hadn't just fallen, they'd been falling for a long time. I just finally stopped cushioning their landing. One day, I ran into an old acquaintance, someone who'd volunteered with Rachel on a local school project. She leaned in, lowered her voice, and said, she looks different now, tired, angry. People are talking about what happened. I nodded politely, not offering much. But inside, I thought, maybe this is the first time she's had to live with the consequences of her own choices. And maybe that's not a punishment. Maybe it's a lesson. In the next part, I'll tell you what healing looked like, not just legally or financially, but emotionally. Because walking away from toxic family ties is only half the journey. Learning how to live and love again, that's the real victory. I used to think that walking away from my family would feel like falling off a cliff. But strangely, it felt like catching my breath for the first time in years. There were no dramatic fireworks, no sudden sense of peace, just quiet. A calm, unfamiliar quiet. And in that silence, I finally had space to think, to feel, to rebuild. I started small. Saturday pottery classes, Sunday morning yoga at the park. A journal by my nightstand where I could pour my thoughts instead of bottling them up. I no longer lived under the constant pressure to be the dependable one, the one who always answered, always showed up, always paid. For once, I was living for me. And the most unexpected part, I didn't feel selfish. I felt whole. Marcus never once pushed me to forgive. He didn't tell me to move on or let it go. He just stood beside me quietly, steadily, as I learned to trust again. One evening, as we stood in our kitchen cooking together like we always did, he pulled a navy velvet box from his pocket. "I thought I'd wait a little longer," he said. But then I realized, if there's someone I want to wake up next to every day through every storm and sunrise, it's you. Inside was a simple platinum ring, understated, elegant, me, and in that moment I realized love doesn't demand sacrifice. Real love offers sanctuary. Marcus's family embraced me like I had always belonged. His mother sent me her favorite pumpkin pie recipe handwritten. His sister dragged me to bridal shops and asked about flower arrangements and dress necklines. No one asked me for money. No one reminded me of how grateful I should be. They just loved me. For the first time, I saw what family could look like when it wasn't built on guilt obligation or silent resentment. And it made me wonder how many generations before me had accepted toxic patterns because they thought that's what love was supposed to look like. But here's the thing about cycles, they continue until someone is brave enough to break them. And that someone this time was me. In the next part, I'll show you how my story began to ripple outward, how speaking my truth gave others permission to do the same. Because healing doesn't end when the hurt stops. It continues when your story becomes someone else's turning point. It started with a post, nothing fancy, just a quiet reflection I typed one rainy afternoon sitting on my balcony with a cup of tea in hand. I titled it, "Family Isn't a Free Pass to Exploit You." I posted it on a mental health forum not expecting much, just a few thoughts I needed to let out, a release. But within days, the post had thousands of views, then tens of thousands. The comments section began to flood with stories, raw, honest, painful. "Your words made me realize I'm not crazy for saying no to my brother. I've been financially supporting my mom for 20 years out of guilt. After reading your post, I finally said enough." I didn't know what financial exploitation was until now, but it's exactly what I've lived with all my life. It was overwhelming and healing. Because for the first time, I wasn't just Zoe, the daughter who got used. I had become Zoe, the woman who spoke up, who said the things so many others were still too afraid to say out loud. That love without respect isn't love. And that being related by blood doesn't give anyone permission to cross your boundaries. Soon, I was invited to write for a small community psychology magazine. I started a column just once a month about toxic family dynamics, financial boundaries, emotional manipulation. One article, one voice at a time. And each time I shared, someone else did too. I remember one message from a woman named Teresa. Her voicemail was quiet, her words shaking. "I spent 30 years thinking I was a bad mother for cutting off my daughter, but now I see. I was just someone who loved too hard and too long in the wrong way. Thank you, Zoe, for helping me see that walking away can still be done with love." I cried listening to her message. Because that's the thing about healing, it multiplies when you share it. Lesson I've learned, sometimes your deepest wound becomes someone else's greatest breakthrough. And when you speak up, you make it easier for others to find their voice too. In the final part, I'll bring you back to where this all began, and how standing up for myself led me to discover a deeper kind of family peace and purpose. Because it turns out, losing the people who didn't value you might just be the start of finding those who truly do. I stood by the window of our home one quiet morning, a warm cup of tea in hand. Outside, the sunlight filtered through the trees, dappling the porch in soft golden light, and beside me on the shelf was our wedding photo. Marcus smiling like he always does, me eyes bright, holding on to the hand that never once let go. We were married under a canopy of cherry blossoms. It wasn't a grand affair, just a simple ceremony by the lake with the few people who had stood by me when everything else fell apart. Jason gave the speech that day. His voice trembled as he said, "I used to think family was who you were born to, but Zoe taught me that real family is who you feel safe with. It's who lets you speak. It's who respects your silence." There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. When I look back now, the pain still lingers, but it no longer controls me. I used to think that setting boundaries meant pushing people away, that walking away meant giving up. But I know now protecting your peace doesn't make you cold. it makes you wise. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say, no. I still get the occasional message from my mother, some filled with blame, some with silence, but I don't answer anymore. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm free. Free from the belief that I have to earn love by being useful. Free from the shame of not giving more than I had. Free from the version of me that confused loyalty with silence. And in that freedom, I found something else, a new kind of family, a new kind of love, a new kind of life where I don't have to break myself to be accepted. Final lesson, you don't owe anyone access to your life just because they share your last name. Family should be a place of safety, not sacrifice. And if it isn't, it's okay to walk away. That's not betrayal, that's self-respect. To those watching, if you've been carrying the same weight, the same guilt, the same silent fear of setting boundaries, I just want you to know you're not selfish, you're brave, and you deserve peace too. Thank you for being here, for listening, for maybe seeing yourself somewhere in this story. And if this helped you even just a little, share it, comment, start a conversation, because stories like these shouldn't stay in the dark. They deserve the light. See you in the next one.